Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Leap Day edition of the February 29th Board of Education meeting on the budget. At this time, I'd ask the audience as well as the board to rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right.
You can use this one. There you go.
All right. Good evening, everyone. At this time, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn to executive session to discuss an individual student matter.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Hopefully we'll be back at 6 o'clock.
Where are you about 6 o'clock?
And before we start our budget meeting, we're going to have a little celebration. Tonight is Sue Perizola's last board meeting. On the cake that we're going to share, it indicates she's had over 400 board meetings that she's attended. And this is the 7th superintendent that she has.
What else does it say? Come on, what else does it say? The last one is awesome.
So we congratulate Sue. We say goodbye to a very dear friend and a very important cog in our system of education. And I'm sure you'll have a wonderful retirement, and we wish you all the best, and come back at any time.
Thank you.
Come on. You can cut the mic, can't you?
Press the button, the little brown button, it will turn blue.
The little round button.
Albert Tony.
Give it a second,
Oh, there.
should turn blue.
I just reset it.
So here.
Oh, the blue light. There you go.
Okay, I am overwhelmed the last week or so, 2 weeks. I've been feeling a lot of things, but overwhelmed and really, really grateful. So I just want to thank you and all of the boards who came before you for letting me have this opportunity. Truly, it has been an honor and a privilege to work in this district. I wouldn't do this job for any other district. I came to the district when I was 4 years old. I loved my kindergarten teacher, Mrs. Cleveland, at 16 Road Elementary. I won't bore you with it, but I can name every teacher I've had here at Horseheads. Just, I could, but I won't. Junior High West was what the middle school was before, and West was best. My class was the 100th graduating class of Horseheads High School, and I am a 4th generation Horseheads graduate. So it's no wonder this place is in my heart and under my skin. So obviously memories have been flooding back, and big memories and small memories, and the most amazing kids ever. We are very, very lucky to have here at Horseheads the most incredible staff ever, helping our kids get their quality education. So just quickly, some memories that I like to share that have popped up. World War II teaching days at the middle school, Veterans Tributes across the district, Make a Difference Day, Grandparents' Day, Unified Sports, the Senior Walk, maybe one of the best things we do here, and very, very honored to play a small part in the greatest tribute concert ever for Chuck Griffin. Those are the ones that have been sticking out for me, but they are stitched together with small things that aren't small things, like thousands of gingerbread houses made of graham crackers and milk crackers and frosting. I loved everyone. I must have 1,000 pictures of but also, you can't have 30 years without challenges and heartache and tragedies, and we got through them together because of the compassion and kindness that this district is. Amazing that our community is, hashtag we are Horseheads. We are. And Dr. Douglas is going to introduce your new community information specialist, so I won't steal his thunder, maybe a little.
I was going to turn it over to you.
I want you to know that Sam, the district is in good hands with this one. She is pretty incredible. We've had a busy few days and I'm exhausted, but like me, Sam is a Horseheads graduate. Unlike me, she graduated in this century. So she has a whole lot more energy and a lot of ideas, and you're in good hands with this one. Okay, one quick story, if I may, before you get back to the very important work you're doing tonight. A few weeks ago was a particularly challenging day, and I will describe it in three things. Snow day, Regents exams, and our automated text message didn't work right. People had feelings, and they should have. You think after 30 years I have a thick skin? I do not. So it was a day. That evening, I was checking social media, and there was a message to the district Facebook page, and I see that little thing, and I say, uh-oh. I opened it up, and it was from Rich Waters, Warren. Wow. Exactly. So, Mr. Waters was assistant superintendent when I was a student here, and I was lucky enough to work with him for a couple of years. His message said, "You're doing fine." He didn't know it was me he was sending that message to, and he had no idea that that was exactly what I needed to read. So there are no coincidences, right? So we got talking, and 89 years old, and just having a great retirement. He said, I really miss Horseheads. I never miss a post. I told him that I was retiring, and he gave me some advice I'd like to share if I could. And I'm wondering when the wisdom will happen. Is it right after retirement, or does it come later? His advice was, look ahead, not back. So I'm going to share that with you and encourage you all to do that. We don't have to look back to know that Horseheads has the richest history, but it's history. We don't have to look back to know we've weathered challenges together. We work together to weather them. So I know that you'll continue to look forward and do what's best for all of our students, not just our students today, but our students in the future. I am looking forward to all the wonderful things you'll continue to do, and I hope you invite me back. And just from the bottom of my heart, thank you so, so much.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, as Sue has introduced our new communication information specialist, Sam. Sam, would you get a couple pictures of Sue coming over and cutting her cake? And if we could just take a brief recess so everyone can get some cake that's in the room, as we've got a budget presentation to go through, and it's better to eat while we're talking.
Oh, okay. I have power. We are in recess, so we can have some cake. Oops. Sorry about that, wasn't paying attention. All right, so our pause is over, and I call the meeting back to order. And before we turn it over for our budget update, there is one addition to the agenda under the miscellaneous action or items for action. We have a motion that we will also be acting upon besides the proposal for the school calendar. With that said, we go to section 2, the 2024-2025 budget development proposal.
Thank you, President and Congressman. Ladies and gentlemen, members of our community, this is our second preliminary budget overview, February 29th, and we're trying to address it a little different than just going through the recap and then the departments. So we wanted to start off and bring some highlights from our last meeting here. And one of the things we want the community to know, as well as the board, that we talked about last time are the financial challenges currently facing districts, as well as our district in New York State, for the upcoming 24-25 school year and through our budget. More specifically, we have to remember that districts get judged by physical stress. We talked about this at the last meeting, and if you look at it online, it will say that we have no designation or 0 physical stress. However, that's looking back a year. That does not take into consideration where we are currently, and I'm not saying that we're stressed, but I think next year's designation will sort of leap forward just because of the issues of inflation, healthcare, and the reductions at the state level for the district. We talked about last year that this stress is actually coming on because of the inflation, because of the healthcare rise with inflation and the cost going up for everything, but also that the district permanently lost funding from the state, like all districts did before, in the form of the gap elimination adjustment. For this district, it was roughly over a 5-year period of $21.5 million in district revenue. And that district revenue should be in our budget. But the state, under Governor Cuomo, took that away. That averages out to roughly $4.3 million of annual loss that the district should be receiving each and every year from the state. We can't do anything about it, but we've tried to cover that all the way since 2014-15 and beyond, and try to stay staff strong and program strong as long as we can. And all the boards have tried to maintain that situation, and I commend everyone for doing that. But at this point, what happens is we're starting to feel the pinch of it. The challenges, like I said, are especially this year in the year of health insurance, and that is primarily because all vendors out there of the health industry have contracts that are coming due that work with our insurers, Blue Cross Blue Shield, for us, as well as others out there. We don't say the New York 44 or other plans, but those type of plans are seeing the same type of inflationary pressures. We also have inflationary challenges with contractual services of supplies, utilities, labor, food, etc. No different than everyone at home. And what happens is school districts tend to see it 1 or 2 years after it starts, just like when a recession happens. So we have, most importantly, past and ongoing inflationary pressures. Even though inflation is starting to come in line, it may take us 1 to 2 years to see that. So during the past 5 to 7 years, we've been able to work very productively with that. Now we're going to have to make some adjustments to reposition ourselves and then try to grow as we did after the 2012 Great Recession. Specifically, our tax on true rates over that time, we were somewhere around 1830. The district, over almost a 10 to 15-year period, 12-year period, has been able to maintain, improve the district, and lower the overall tax rates for all residents in the district. Now, people sometimes do not understand tax on true, but this is the apples to apples number that all districts in the state of New York must report. Ours currently is $16.38. When I started, it was, I think, roughly around 1804, and it was projected to go up to 1830. So that's why we use it. We also compare against our other communities, although they may not like that. I mean, one of the things we get to say is that if you look at these rates year over year, we have always had a much better tax on true rate in comparison. What this means is if you had in 2012-13 a $100,000 home in Horseheads, you pay $1,826 a year in taxes. However, that same $100,000 home in Corning, you'd pay $2,500 in taxes. In Elmira Heights, $2,219 in taxes. And in Elmira, we have not been able to find that on their website, and we have not heard of that information. But we know that their trend was still higher, and it came down, and then it was going back up because of building trends. And you'll sort of see that in Corning, where it came down, and then as they built, it went up, and so forth. And we're going to see the same thing. I mean, if you look at in 2017-18, the capital project was passed, our tax rate was projected with that project to go up almost to 1854, and that was overwhelmingly passed by the community. But our work as a board, a district, really actually started to bring it down. So really, it's not our capital project, it's our inflationary pressures that are now affecting the district. And that's the same in our second project, where in 2021, you see 1732, it's supposed to go up to 1932, roughly right around there. And the very next year, and this year, it went down. So you're seeing that, and that just sort of says that we're going to have debt service, but it has nothing to do with our inflationary trends. What happens is tax levy versus tax rate. This just gives you the historical perspective of what the tax levy was and how it rose, and also that you can have a high tax levy percentage, but yet the rate can be relatively low. A prime example is even last year where the levy was 4.66, but the rate ended up being a 2% rate increase, right? You can look at 22-23. The district went out, the community passed a 3% levy increase, but the levy is just the amount that the money has changed. It's the rate that's the important. The rate went down by over 7.39%, which that's what brought down almost $1.28 in 1 year in reduction in property taxes. Values could have went up, but it still covered it, and that's where we currently are. So as you go through this, the challenge is really, like we talked about last time, and we're going to hit this every single time, is that is the inflationary chart in the local revenue growth over each of those years from 2015 up to current. Everything in the yellow area is the loss of local revenue to keep up with inflation. Over that time, right, the last 3 years, it's 21.3% or $9.3 million in lost revenue. That's because we aren't allowed to collect that revenue. Because the state law says we can only go out at 2% calculation of a levy or the rate of inflation, whichever is less. In the last 2 years, it's 2%, and that's that bottom line. So you can see, just by adding that $9.3 million, if we just went at the rate of inflation each year, we would not have a budget problem. But the problem is we're going to have to face it after the fact, and that's what this shows. It's not just a local revenue problem as well, it's also a state revenue problem. That's in the state foundation aid. Notice, the bottom line is what the state has said they'll kick in each year. Last year was the first year they actually over-exceeded at 10.4%. And, you know, the state revenues at 10.4, but we ended up going out for the rate of inflation at 6.4. But the problem is it doesn't make up for the revenue lost in the years preceding that. When you look at one of the years is at 0, but yet the state revenue should have been at 2.5 because of inflation. The next year, 3.14 is what the state gave us, but the inflation was 7%. The next year, it was 3.42, but the high was 9.12 inflation. All that yellow is lost revenue, and as you can see, over that time, even in taking into the consideration that last year's more aid than inflation, we're still short of a loss of revenue from the state's support, which they're constitutionally obligated to do, of $2.9 million. Now, if you take that $2.9 million and 9.3, we're already at $12.2 million of funding that the district should be provided for just to keep up with inflation. Our gap was 15.3, I think it was, or somewhere around there, right? 13.2 minus 15.3 means we should, if we kept up with inflation, have about a $2 million gap, but we're not in control of that because of state law requirements. So we just want to make sure everybody always understands that, because we have to make sure people understand that, because people are feeling it at home, and it's no different in business, and it's no different in school. So we wanted to bring that to you as the start of our budget to remind everybody, and hopefully people at home are watching it, because we have to give the facts. There's no way about it. We are one of the most transparent operations in the area. We live stream, we put up our information online, we record it and post it as soon as possible when tech can get everything working, and we talk to people about it. And I'm very happy to have the business office that I have, because honestly, we don't answer to anyone except our internal controls, and they have done well over the past several years of trying to maintain it, but they are going to have challenges primarily of the issues that we've sort of explained right now. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to our Assistant Superintendent for Business, as Katie said.
All right, well, I'm just here to actually pass it along to the players. We'll get through our department budget overviews first. So we do a continuous flow of the budget.
Everybody? So, student services and special education, so this is the overview for our department. And just as a reminder, our department is a combination of various related services, as well as teaching staff and assistants. So this budget will cover occupational therapists, physical therapists, speech therapists, school psychologists, social work and social work assistants, all of our school health services, such as our nurse practitioners, our RNs and LPNs. It also covers our CSD chair people, and then the CSD secretaries that support us. And so you will see that, as well as the staff that we share in partnership or in relationship with the building principals, all the special education teachers and the teaching assistants that are connected with our special education programs. So you'll see that encompassed in this budget. So overall summary, which is what we'll go over first with regards to this first slide, and then we'll break it down further into those different areas that I just spoke about. So salaries with the 23-24 budget versus 24-25, you'll see an increase up to what will be $7,111,084. Has to do with contractual obligations for increases in salaries. Equipment, we actually reduced slightly by about $5,000. Contractual and conferences, that will encompass any of the professional learning obligations that we have for any of the staff that I had spoke about within our department. It also covers their continuing education, as well as you've seen come through in some of your in the most recent board agendas, the health and welfare contracts for the non-public schools. So that is also encompassed under the contractual or conference line. So a slight increase in that, up to $106,000 from $96,000. The next line has to deal with supplies for our department, and that again encompasses all of the departments, including our medical and our school supplies. And you'll see an increase in our supplies. You know, unfortunately, like Dr. Douglas was talking about, there's an increase in inflation and an increase cost to the supplies that we have. Next, we'll talk about tuition. So we have that flat for this year. That tuition, as a reminder, is for students that are in program in foster care that are in other districts. It also could be for students that are in charter schools and or maybe in a mental health placement. And so we are obligated to provide education, and so we pay for the education for students that are in those placements. Last slide on the overall budget is for all of our OC services that are related to special education. Similar trend that I had spoken about with regards to supplies and salaries. Inflationary rates in general to receive services from OCs, along with we're seeing a growing trend, and I think I spoke about it last year, of two things. One, the severity of students that are showing up at our doorstep that need services, and the number of students that are showing up that need services. So those have a pretty big impact on the number of services that we contract with BOCES. So it is up close to $6 million for the next school year as a conservative estimate. So total with our department, you'll see 9.53% increase. Any questions on the general side? Sure.
I'm wondering with the tuition staying stagnant, knowing that everyone else's fees are increasing, will we see that impact in a couple of years, or is this like a contractual, we know that this is what it's going to be year after year?
With regards to the tuition,
Yeah.
specificity-wise for charter schools.
So this,
Katie.
yeah, sorry, I'm just screwed up on here. So as we continue to build the budget, areas like this will continue to review and make sure they're appropriately budgeted for. Charter school tuition rates do go up each year, so we'll look at the number of students that are currently enrolled. I know we picked up one at a different charter school this year, so we would look at enrollment and that future forecasting of the rate to determine that for the charter schools, and kind of look at the trending in the history of the other situations that Kelly has mentioned. So that all be looked at and reviewed and adjusted appropriately.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Very similar to students that come and go for the special education placements. We make our best guess based on looking back, over the course of the years that we have for students, as well as the enrollment. So. Okay, so here are the positions that I had spoken about within our department and the budgeted estimates for the 24-25 school year. So we had 6.4 administrators and clerical in our office last year. We're down to 6. We had an administrator who we retired that was helping us almost half-time that we did not fill and then absorbed into another position within the district. So we reduced the administrators by 0.4 in our office. So the increase you see actually has to do with the contractual obligations for primarily in those 6 FTE. Teachers, the same. We have 41 teachers, the same number that we had last year. The increase for the budget has to do with the salaries and contractual obligations. Teaching assistants and teacher aides, we actually went down about 5 positions from last year. The increases for the contractual obligations for salary, we are, as we do every year, taking a look at the needs of our students, and we have quite a bit of professional development opportunities that happen, and we have very strong teaching staff that have a lot of experience at this point. So we take a very close look at which students may need a one-on-one, or if we have an opportunity to share teaching assistants. Our goal is always to make students as independent as possible. So this year we have 5 less one-on-one teaching assistants. So that's the decrease in the number of staff from last year. Occupational therapists, school psychologists remain the same as last year. OTs and PTs, we have 5. They're 357,482. We have one additional service that we purchased through BOCES for our occupational therapists at 4 days a week, as well as the physical therapists, but that's encompassed in the BOCES service line. School psychologists, we have 8 in-house, and we do all of that service within our own staff. The increase, again, has to do with salaries and contractual obligations. School health services, that is our nurse practitioner, our building level RNs and our LPNs, both at the building and our one-on-ones. There's a slight decrease you'll see there. Even though we increased salaries, we had 1 less one-on-one LPN than we had last year. So we went from 21 to 20. Speech therapists, we have 7 that we employ in-house. And again, the increase is related to salaries. We have 1 that right now we contract through OCs 4 days a week. The one thing I do want to note there is just like us, BOCES is also struggling to have full-time employment or have all their positions filled, I should say, for anything from special education to therapies, just like we are. So We struggled with that position a bit because we're not at the full 4 days. BOCES cannot find someone to fill the position. So there may be a change internally with that. If we can't get that need filled with BOCES, we may have to look at it ourselves because we have kids that we're obligated to provide services for with the IEP. So right now we have 7.4 through BOCES, or 4 days through BOCES, but that may change depending on the outlook of hiring for them. School social work assistants and school social workers, we have 16, same as last year. So the change you'll see for the next year's budget, again, is due to the salary obligations and the obligations. Yeah.
So for the speech therapists, I don't know if it's working, hello? Can you hear me? Should I try this mic?
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you hear me here?
Yeah.
All right, so for the speech therapist, you were saying we have 7 and we should have 7.4? Is that what
No,
you're
I'm
saying?
sorry. So we have 7 that we hired through Horsets.
Okay,
We then contract for 4 days a week, which
Oh.
is 0.8.
okay,
Oh, another 0.8, but it's through the BOCES line. We have in the past been able to get all 4 days a week of service through BOCES. They're struggling to hire that position. Just like, we struggle to find special education teachers and therapists. So we have not gotten all 4 days a week from BOCES this year.
and they are just employees of BOCES. So doesn't the county have their own speech therapists, or are they separate from BOCES?
So they're separate from BOCES.
So can we contract with the county to help fill the void?
We have a part-time person that used to work for the district that is helping us as much as they can. But finding part-time therapists is really difficult. So the contract for the county has to do with preschool services. We wouldn't contract with them for school-age services. They're not a school-age approved provider.
Oh,
So they're
okay.
only approved for preschool,
Okay, gotcha. So you would have to try to find a different,
a private provider.
a private provider that can do it for school age,
Yeah.
or speech therapy.
Yeah,
Okay,
and that's certified and licensed for New York State.
gotcha. And that's the challenge.
Yep.
Okay, thank you for
Sure.
clarifying.
Any other questions?
I don't know if you'll have the answer to this, but I'm wondering, does each group have their own budget for like subs? Because I know we have RN subs and people get sick. Is there like a separate budget for subs for each department, or does that come out of, where does that sit in our overall budget?
The subs don't sit underneath my budget, and subs are just specifically for like OT, PT, speech, school psychologists.
Yeah.
They are hard to find. And even the long-term subs, like we had, what I was gonna say is we had someone that was out on maternity leave in the fall, and we could not find a substitute, so we had to rearrange caseloads across the district to cover that internally, which was a big stretch. But the substitutes don't fall in any of my budget lines.
Yes, there is separate budgeting for substitutes in different budget codes.
Okay.
Thank you. Next is Charles State for the athletic department. Yeah.
How's it going? Good evening. We'll start by just saying thank you for all your support with athletics. I feel athletics is in a really good place, and it obviously starts here at the board with your support in every category. So thank you for that. So we'll go through the overview, similar to what Kelly just did, probably not as eloquently, but I will do the best I can. So our salaries are increasing, again, that's contractual, but we do have some positions that we added. So this year, modified football was added, a modified soccer coach, unified bowling, our numbers have doubled from last year. And girls flag football, we've added a JV level because of the participation numbers. So due to our participation numbers continually increasing, which is a great thing, charge of this board, obviously our salaries have come in line with that. So that's why you see that bump there. The contractual line is going to stay the same. This covers our athletic trainers, which we have 2 of them now, one at the modified level, one at the JV and varsity. Our weightlifting program is under contractual, which has been great for our student athletes at every level. All of our memberships are covered under this, so Section 4, our NISPA, all those contractual memberships are there. And this also covers when teams want to go to tournaments or want to go to outside to challenge themselves and put themselves in better positions come sectional time. This contractual line covers that as well. The official line has stayed the same. You would think with increased teams there'd be more costs with officials, but that has not been the case, so that's positive. Supplies, this is your day-to-day stuff that your teams use, right? From, could be basketballs and wrestling tape, or it could be anything, but it's really your day-to-day supplies for your teams, just to make sure they have what they need every year, replacing items as well. But each team is allotted a certain amount of money from that supply line that goes with those purchases. The equipment line stays the same, and the big portion of this is the uniform cost. We are on a 3-year uniform cycle, even though my coaches wish it was 1 year. But we do replace it every 3 years and then filter it down, and that is always planned out, so that's going to stay the same. Our BOCES line is going up slightly, and that is due to the change in our student registration from Family ID to Final Forms. Final Forms has been a great transition, a great change, because it streamlines communication between our trainers, our nurses, our coaches, our academic advisors, the administration, obviously, directly to our coaches, without having to go through emails back and forth and worrying about if they're checked or not. But it really has improved that communication, and obviously the safety of our student athletes. Having the emergency information right on your phone with live links has been a really good thing. So that's a slight increase there from the BOCES line. So overall, an increase of 3.49%. Not that exciting to talk about, but if you have any questions, please let me know. Katrina.
So the BOCES line, the only thing that they provide to us is the Final Forms, so that whole program is $6,513. Or do they provide anything else to us, service-wise?
Section 4.
What's that?
Section 4 dues are in BOCES.
So Section 4 dues are in BOCES.
What?
Section 4 dues. So we pay Section 4 every year, we pay NISPA every year for their services and
Okay.
source requirements.
They actually run it through BOCES so the schools can get some state aid back on it. It's a sort of an unusual thing, but it's helpful.
Okay, so BOCES encompasses Final Forms and Section 4 dues. So did they create the app, the Final Forms app, or is that just like a program that how does that work?
No, it's just a private company that has partnered with BOCES to allow us to have to pay for it and get it covered basically.
We get a better price because it's shared amongst both the districts for contractual purposes. And then BOCES provides the backbone and tech support to run the program. So we're not dealing directly with the vendor. They have people in-house that can assist when we have interface issues.
Oh, so this is like, it's like a shared service. So because we do it with a bunch of people, we only have to pay for a small portion of it instead of the whole, which is, if it was like $18,000, we only have to pay like $6,000.
Sure, we still pay it per student athlete cost, or per
Yes.
person cost, but we get it probably reduced because of the BOCES cost.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Liz.
Do you have a head count of how many students we have who are student athletes?
Yes. Right now, as of today, we have 981 for this year alone, and we still have, 2 weeks left, or 1 week left for varsity and JV registrations, and then 3 weeks left for modified, which I assume as well. We should break the 1,000 mark, and it's a huge increase based on last year, but yes.
Yeah, awesome, thank you.
Anyone else? All right. A little more specific. So a lot of this is, again, contractual, director and clerical, increase due to contract. Coaches, we've talked about those additional coaches we've added, but then you have the contractual increase there. Our pool supervisor and lifeguards stays the same. We have a new pool supervisor, and she's been doing a great job, but that stays the same. And then our supervisors, timers, scores, that stays the same as well. Our home games and our needs have not changed there. That's at most of the varsity level and JV level, but there is some modified bookkeeping costs in there. Stipends increases again contractual. This is our athletic manager, our aquatic director. These are all stipends that are contractually raised, and that's why you see the increase. Any questions about these specific ones? Yes.
Just a random question popped in my head. You came up with pool supervisor and lifeguards. The cost of maintaining the pool itself, the facility cost, does that fall on your budget or facilities budget?
That falls under facilities budget. Thank goodness.
Mike's not here.
Yeah, especially this year. Thank goodness.
Well, that frankly, the reason I asked is because we know, right, the pool is nearing end of life, and I was just thinking about if we were to have some kind of an issue that required spend, where that would hit. So thank you.
Yes, sir.
Where does the concession stand managers fall under your budget, or?
Yeah, concession stand managers are under my stipends, and also the academic advisors are under there as well. Yeah, they're all contractually paid. Anything else? Okay, well, thank you again for all your support for athletics. Go Raiders. Got a lot of teams in the States and sectionals this weekend, so cheer them on. And it's always great to see you guys out of contest. So thank you again, and have a great night. Who am I passing this to? Ms. Bizzetti? All right.
So before we get into the budget, I just want to just digress for a quick minute and say, Sue, we've had 10 years of doing these presentations together. Thank you for the support and holding my hand during stress. And yeah, much appreciated. Thank you. All right, before I get weedy. Okay, so as promised and expected, since we last met, there's been some work done on the budget, so I'm just going to walk you through where we last met and last left off, and then Tony and I will walk you through the adjustments we've been able to make to date. So this is an overview of our projected state aid. The foundation aid figure is based on what was in the governor's proposal. This does include still her proposed change to the inflationary factor within the foundation aid formula. If we revert back to the formula as it is intended, we are entitled to an additional $400,000 to $500,000 more. So we'll wait to see what happens with the final budget. But that's the number as it stands right now from the governor. Transportation aid and BOCES aid, those are both expense-driven aids. Those are based on projections of expenses that we're anticipating to incur this year that will be aided in the following year. So as we continue to update our year-end projections, fine-tune those year-end costs, the aid projections will be updated as well to reflect its true nature as we can. Building aid, this includes all of our cash projects from the past, our current referendum bond projects that are receiving aid, and an estimate of what we're anticipating to receive for the referendum 2 aid for Big Flats and Gardner Road. It's an estimate at this point. We're having a meeting next week, Ann and I, with fiscal advisors to do a full comprehensive review of the building aid for the entirety of referendum 2 and the debt service schedule, so there'll be updates to come for that later. And then other aid items, that's made up of our excess cost aid, which is aid we get on special education services and instructional materials aid, which is our textbooks, software, hardware, library materials. The decrease represents a small decrease in the excess cost aid. So all told, at this point in time, our state aid is projected to increase $3.4 million. The rules of the tax levy limit, items of note, were capped at that 2%. As Dr. Douglas has talked before, inflation is considerably higher than that, but we are locked in for the law of the calculation at 2%, and the growth factor is 1.0034. Overview of the formula in its entirety, you'll see where that growth factor is incorporated and the 2% is that line in yellow. Pilots are still under review. Right now, we're at $162,000 expected in pilot payments. So before we get to any exclusion items that we're allowed to levy tax on, the levy is $44,214,624. So the exclusions portion are the items outside that base calculation that we are allowed to levy a tax on. The first one is the capital exclusion, so that incorporates any of our capital expenses, that on our capital projects, that on our buses, any monies that we're moving to the capital fund for future capital projects, that's all incorporated on the expense side of the calculation. And that is offset by any anticipated building aid, a specific transportation aid formula, any debt service that we choose to use, things of that nature. Anything that offsets those capital expenses is deducted from that. Anything that's a positive, so the expenses exceed the local share. It's just the local share that we talked about, we're allowed to levy a tax on. This year it's $6.1 million that for the formula we can levy a tax on. This is all part of our borrowing plan that was presented to the voters for both referendum 1 and referendum 2. Referendum 1, we are converting to a fully amortized bond to 24-25. And referendum 2, we have our first short-term note payment in 24-25. The ERS exclusion, so anytime the rate of either ERS or TRS increases by more than 2%, we can levy a tax on anything above that 2%. So ERS increased by 2.1%. So we can levy a tax at 0.1% on the salaries of the ERS system. So $10,000 is added. So with all that baked together, our maximum allowable tax levy limit, according to the formula permissible by law, 2%. Simple majority approval is $50,356,660. Increase over prior year of $6.6 million or 15.16%.
Officially, that is 2%. And that's what people have to know. It gets confusing in the law, but that is the 2% tax levy number.
So we're increasing the budget by $7 million, is that what it's saying? Like the difference between the 43 million and the 53 million, that's what we're increasing our budget by?
This is revenue. This is the revenue side of the budget.
Okay.
So on the revenue side of the budget is where the tax levy is housed. So this calculation tells us what we're allowed to levy and sorts out what that increase is. So if the board opts to go out at this amount, the revenue side of the budget would go up to $6.6 million.
Okay, so this is saying what we bring in.
Correct. This is our revenue
This
source
is what we bring in.
Correct.
But our budget is 94, so, or not 94, like 90 million.
So our budget last presented was $108 million.
Okay, so what is that other part? That's not the revenue that we're bringing in. So if we're at 100 million and the overall budget is, oh, the other, so it's state aid and all those other things?
So this is what we got.
Okay.
So total, so tax items shows a change of 422. That is the change in the pilots. In between the free reference at this point in time, I don't incorporate any levy increase into this slide. Determining what the board wants to do with the levy is a future conversation that we have over the course of these presentations. So right now, we just hold the line, keep the levy flat, absent any other changes to the pilots that are also in here and taxes and penalties that are also collected through here.
If I can add, Katie,
Sure.
this document right here is if the board, say hypothetically, the board said, we're not raising taxes at all. Everybody might love it, but that's the revenue. And if we have $108 million, it means if we get no additional revenue, we have to cut the budget to get the $93,499,000, which is a $15 million cut. So that's without any tax levy, that's without any additional funds from the state or any additional use of our tools that we have until we use reductions. So what happened is the slide before has nothing to do with like the overall budget. It's just saying that that's a decision point. We're going to talk about it at the end of this presentation because we need to have direction. That's the sort of 30, 60,000 foot view that the board tells us what we're going to do. And then we'll start working of the how after we know where that is. Normally we'd ask it a little later. We don't have time to wait after the next meeting. So we'll talk about that a little bit later.
So state aid, this is discussed on the prior slide, it says we know it today. Other revenue includes things, as noted, interest, admissions, rental income, BOCES refunds, stop loss insurance, things of that nature. For 24-25 reductions I have made to that line, however, I have removed any anticipated revenue for the stop loss insurance. We used to see a more steady stream of claims exceeding our attachment point for night payments. That has since not been the case in the most recent years, so the prudent thing to do is remove it from the revenue budget as a funding source that is likely not to come to fruition. And then the BOCES refund, we've been seeing a steady decline there. It went down by $200,000 for what we received this year, so we're going to follow that trend and reduce the budget by that $200,000 to stay on track with what we are receiving. As Dr. Douglas mentioned, this is our base point. We don't talk about, in this slide anyways, the amount of the tax levy increase. We don't talk about appropriated reserves, fund balance, or debt service. There are tools that we'll talk about through this process, but for this slide's purpose, this is the money we have coming in as we know it against those other items. So budgeted revenue, with that said, is $93,500,000. Revenue or budgeted expenditures. This does not include any of the adjustments that I alluded to that Tony and I will talk about later. This is where we left things at the last meeting. Salaries includes all contractual items, all salaries that our employees are entitled to within their contract, substitutes, overtime, extra pay, health buyouts, curriculum work, stipends, things of that nature. The benefits line includes the district's portion of ERS, TRS, and FICA-Med, workers' comp insurance, vision and dental insurance, our health claims, our house the increase that you're seeing is primarily the increase in the health claims that we've been talking that we need to make that jump to normalize our budget. Claims in this presented budget are up $3.6 million. And this number also does not yet include the increase in the health contributions that we anticipate to receive based on the new health contribution rates. Debt service we discussed back in the tax tab. This is all the debt between our buses and our building projects, all approved by the voters in accordance with our plan. Those fee services, we have a variety of educational services, special education services, our CTE program, our technology budget is sizable through BOCES. So right now we're looking at an increase of just shy of $1 million with BOCES. This is still currently being embedded from a variety of angles, and we'll continue to monitor and fine-tune that budget. Equipment supplies contractual, pretty self-explanatory for the most part. Items of note, it does include the increase to the SRO contract from a shift to the county from the village. Their structure is a little bit different. They assign us a sergeant, so that gave an increased cost for that additional level of service and support. And then the largest item within that we discussed last time is there's currently $1 million in this code for the potential settlement of a large tax challenge. Our tax reserve does not hold the sufficient funds to pay what could be that very large payout. So right now it's in the general fund. It's an expense we know is coming. The challenge is we don't know when, and we don't know how much, but it is something that we know we have to plan for in some form or fashion. So we're continuing to brainstorm other ways to meet that obligation, but right now it's in the general fund.
What Katie is referring to there is with that tax cert, is we're exploring when might that potential liability come due for the district. We just don't know. But we're going to be seeking counsel's advice as well, because really in this budget right now, there would be $1 million sitting in the budget for no other purpose except sitting there waiting. And if it doesn't come due next year, we've sat on $1 million, you see what I'm saying, in a budget, with a budget issue where we may not have to, but we don't know if we can do that or not. So that's something that's going to develop over time, and Katie and Ann are exploring those options.
Yeah, so I'm maintaining close contact with our council regarding this to stay up to date on any discussions that may be had, but we don't know at this point if the parties are going to enter into their own settlement negotiations, which may have a shorter time frame than if they can't work this out amongst themselves and they have to go to trial in front of a judge as they did before. That could prolong the time frame, and then when the judgment is ordered for us to pay. So staying on top of it, keeping close tabs on it, and we'll keep you updated and modify the adjustment or modify the budget as things come up.
So in that aspect, is that money supposed to be available from that, the reserve fund, from the taxpayer reserve fund? Because I know we had the settlement, the last one was like 29 million. You were saying that has pretty much depleted our capital or the reserve fund for the extra taxes. So with that million, is that million supposed to be a part of that reserve that's just not there because we've been depleted so much because of these cases that have been coming at us?
Right, there is sufficient funds in the reserve at this time to pay such a large settlement. We've had two pretty sizable ones in the recent months that are higher than what we typically have experienced. So to not be surprised later with the shortfall in the reserve, we need to for the money.
So how do we put money into that reserve fund? What's that process look like?
Yep, so at the end of each year when we close the budget, there's a rather complex fund balance calculation that takes into account our operating surplus and deficit, our current reserve levels, any usage of reserve, any funding of reserves, and then any surplus that we identify that could be over our 4% of unassigned fund balance. That's typically when we look at that money and say, what could we do with it in the reserve? Our goal over the last several years is to limit the tax impact for the capital work. So we put some $10 million for two capital projects into the capital reserve to offset that tax impact for the capital projects. But the process in general is the books are closed. We see what that surplus is over that 4% unassigned fund balance, and it's a discussion with the finance committee and the board on where that surplus could be placed.
Okay, so then in the past two budget seasons, we have also put that excessive money into the capital fund, but that is the debt service line that is also at an increase of still 79%, even with our reserves that we've been putting towards that project.
So the debt service is separate from the reserve. The debt service is the principal and interest payments we're obligated to pay on our debt. This is the expense side of the budget. And use of the reserves, debt service reserve, if that's what you're referring to, that would be on the revenue side, is an offset. But the line you're seeing here is the principal and interest payment that we're obligated to pay on any of our debt, short-term and long-term.
And if I can add, in the past years, we did not just add anything to just one reserve. The board usually, with the financial advisory committee that I have, we develop a plan, bring it to the board, and the board usually gives us sort of a range, because we don't know where the money is going to absolutely end up, that up to so much would go to this reserve, up to so much would go to this, up to so much would go to that, and that's what the board usually authorizes Once we do it, then we put it in, and then the board approves it again.
Okay, so we planned on being 79% over then. Is that, because it's an increase of 79%, I guess I'm just confused. Is 79% an increase over what it should have been?
No,
No,
it's the increase in our debt service schedule based on our borrowing plan between our buses, referendum 1, borrowings, and referendum 2.
that's why building aid on the revenue side has also been increasing, so they tend to offset each other.
So it will offset that 79% to take it down to a much smaller.
Well, this will remain the same because this is the expense side. Any building aid is reported on the revenue side, so that 79% for this particular purpose isn't going to change because this is a presentation on the budget expense side. But the building aid we do receive is used to support the debt we have to pay. When we talk about planning capital projects, there's a big discussion on the building aid we're going to receive on capital projects and the discussion on the local share. So the building aid is what we receive from the state to support our capital projects, and we're very strategic and thoughtful on how we plan these projects and find the aid to maximize that benefit as best we can. The building aid is 80%, so there is always that local share component. But for this slide, purposes only, this is strictly principal and interest payment, not offset by any debt service or local share taxes.
And do our interest rates change on capital projects, or do they stay, like, does it change every 5 to 6 years, or does it stay the same?
So once we convert to a long-term bond, we're locked in to an interest rate unless in the future the bond is called and there's a lower interest rate and it's advantageous for us to refinance, then we can refinance and get a lower interest rate. When we're doing our short-term borrowings, it is based on the going market rate at the time. You know, based on our credit rating, based on the size of the bond. You know, the more you borrow, you typically see a better interest rate than the smaller ones. People like the large investments that can, you know, do what financial institutions do with these large investments. Yes, we are subject for our short-term borrowings. They are 1-year short-term notes that renew each year. Those are subject to the current market.
Okay.
And Katie, if you can add in about the fact that when we do borrow, there's oftentimes premiums that are given back to the district and how we handle those.
Yep, so when we borrow, it's typical for investors to offer premiums on the investment. So when they offer an interest rate of X, they offer a premium of $300,000 that they give us to offset that interest rate. So that premium goes into our debt service reserve that we can use for purposes as we have in the past to offset our debt, bring down the tax levy. Investors like to do that because then they can again turn around and do what these investors do and take the bonds to other markets and make more money off those folks than us. So by offering the premium, they win the bid to get a net lower rate. And then that premium we put into our debt service reserve so it continues to grow that reserve.
And the reason being is school district bonds or callable notes are very popular secured investments for those individuals out there. The higher your rating is for, what's the rating, Moody's rating, the higher that is, the better you're seen as a credit-worthy individual, and we've had good success there. Now, when you have times of difficulties in the financial markets, that can waver a little. We just don't know, but right now we still have been on a very favorable because we've always been able to manage and take care of our debt and services.
Transfers and capital outlay as part of our proposed spending plan for referendum 2. We had discussed removing that $1 million transfer to capital out of the budget to help offset the cost of the debt service. That $1 million is typically calculated in the tax cap calculation, but with the removal of that $1 million, it has brought the levy down in accordance with the plan that's presented. So at this time, expenditures are just under $109 million, 15.89% increase. So our gap, when we last spoke a couple weeks ago, we're at $15.3 million. We have, again, as promised, kind of dug in, identified those areas that are least impactful to programming and things of that nature. Chirping depends on those things that we know we can reduce or live without, that sort of thing. So Tony's going to tag team this with me. He's going to take the first grouping of it, and we'll walk you through each one, what it is and why we work with making that reduction.
Thank you. So as I mentioned before, our focus of our work and mentioned the last board meeting has been on our BOE services, and what can we look at there as far as reductions, programs we may not use or may not use as heavily, or just sharpening of pencil on particular topics and issues. The first one has been one we've had for some time. Some of you might recall several years back when we entered into the STEM Academy, 2015. It's our first cohort of students. We have sent 4 that first year, maybe 4 the second year, and 2 in subsequent years, and sometimes only 1. It's very familiar here, depending on the number of graduates we've sent to that program. This is for 7th and 8th graders that show a disposition to science and struggle in school in other ways. There's usually 6 identifiable factors to which these students are talked about amongst the teams in the 8th grade for placement in 9th grade in this academy, to which they attend off-site through BOCES. We do have 3 slots opening with graduates this coming year. They do come with a some price. It's not to refill those particular 3 slots at a cost of $48,000 reduction to the budget. The next one is Ron Holloway had sat on this committee with OCs to look at the creation of a middle school alternative education program in previous years. We went into it with the idea that it could be an outlet for a different group of students. We do have an alt-ed program at the high school that we participate in. The idea was let's assist those students that might be struggling in 7th and 8th grade, get them identified and be able to use this program. To date, we have never kept a student in it for more than several months at best. We've had students attend and come back to the middle school. We've never filled it. So we've never had 5 in there, and at any given month, we're lucky to have 1 individual in there. So it is an amount of money that sits there. We end up getting back at the end of the year as unused. The thing here is to maintain at least 1 slot for that release valve, or in case we need it for a student. It just needs something different to have still an opportunity available to us in this program. I don't anticipate, not on something, a change in the per unit cost per individual, because the program is used heavily by other groups in the area. So our 5 is pretty small in the barrel. There might be a small effect, maybe not as high as $113,000 savings, but it is a fairly expensive program. It's a full day BOCES program. Again, we keep 1, we've never used all 5, and we're lucky to use 4 in it, 1 in any given year at any given time. We have not had someone go into the program and maintain themselves in the program. This is a particular item that we implemented probably back in 2013, 14, 15, somewhere in there. I don't recall exactly. We had some pictures taken, and it was the outside building and what it looked like. Needless to say, everything in that system right now is dated with our building projects. It's not seen as a system we've used or a viable system to update. Our suggestion at this point is to remove that cost.
Yeah. So the emergency management, are we using some other system to get the same results?
No, I'm sorry, Warren, I should have qualified. Navigate is the software. It's a Navigate emergency management software. Navigate itself is a system, and how do this here, and I don't know if you can see it more clearly to it, but to which we document what classrooms look like by taking pictures of the classrooms, and it's uploaded to a system to be used by emergency management systems if something is to happen in the building, and they have photographs of what it kind of looks like. That's my understanding. We entered that, so it's a program that is used, like it says, to navigate a building and what a building might look like and to be used in an emergency situation. To date, we have not used it. We've never implemented to its full extent. We've never uploaded all pictures of all buildings and all across the district. It hasn't been seen one of value to anybody in the system, and we've been paying a $6,000 price for the last 7 to 8 years without any use. So it's not emergency management services. We're not talking about that. We're talking about very particular software that does something very specific that we're not valuing, and we're not giving our value on it.
In addition to supplement our emergency management programs in the area regularly come on property and training. We make our district available to them regularly so that that sort of is a supplement to this as well. They know our building.
When this first came on board, back at the point of time that Tony was referencing, the idea was that those emergency responders integrated with this system, and there's been a graph I don't know if it was ever even fully implemented there, but it's not being utilized in that format either.
I don't think the two systems ever talked to each other.
No, I think that was the goal of it.
Yeah, sorry for misleading. I'm going to go software. This one that showed up on our BOCES line, and as we went through the fine-tooth code, no one knew what it was, and there was a reason for that because we've never purchased it, never wanted it, we don't even know what it is. So that was an easy removal. This one is going to might come as a little surprise. Bill, Katie, and I, along with Stacy, have been really looking at our laptop replacement cycle and what does that mean, what does that look like. How do other districts maintain their one-to-one? We've been very lucky, and I'm not going to jinx it, but I'm going to say it out loud. With our one-to-ones and the number of computers that we needed in spare and reserve, we do have responsible students that keep them in really good shape, and we're able to maintain a good cycle of those computers. We have that cycle going all the way down. Arguably, we have one-to-ones across the district in all grade levels if we really wanted to. That's how strong we are, thanks to that CIRSA money and ARP usage over the years, and our internal money that we built up since down what I've been here. We used to call it CBT money in the past, right? Get ready for CBT testing, you might remember that name. And we built that internal budget up to offset. And because of that robust nature, we're in a good position right now as far as the number of laptops we have in district. It's felt like we can reduce lines in our BOCES budget and still maintain our one-to-one ratio. There's also considerations of even further reductions here. We still go through it on a regular basis and how we can use other grant funded sources. We are running with our ARP, and we have a smart school that I'll be talking about a little bit later, that are considerations to further go through this and ensure we maintain the appropriate number of laptops, but also at the same time find reductions appropriate that are going to affect program. This is one that's ongoing. Tom mentioned it at our last meeting, the software review. We've to date found reductions of $25,000 in software. I anticipate, I'm hoping that number will double in the next couple of meetings. Really what we're targeting is duplicate software. Since bringing on Canvas is a very robust program, and as we've gone deeper and deeper into that, we realized it takes over what other programs we pay separately for are doing. And so there's a conversation about what can we eliminate because of the robustness of other programs and what duplicate. We also are looking at usage. Particular programs might cost us, $10,000 when the 3 people are using it, and it's only affecting a small number of students, that we could switch them out to another program. Giving people high and dry. I want to be very clear there. Tiffany and Kelly and Joe and I are talking with Bill about making sure that our students and we're letting people in the appropriate software that we already pay for elsewhere and weaning them off something that does the exact same thing and into a more robust program. So as an ongoing line, you're going to see reductions. We feel comfortable with this first flight because of some duplicate natures within our campus learning system. This one I'll do real quick, and I'll hand over the last two to Katie. Rachel mentioned this at our last meeting, looking for other funding sources for our Plus study. It's something, and we all know that there's also things happening at the state level, as Tom has alluded to, even more since our last meeting, as far as challenging this particular work as a system in New York State, and what does it really look like. So we're not, we'll still look and work with Stacy and I, and Others have been involved in the conversation about looking at engineering study, but at this point, if we need to move that way, we'll look to other funding sources. That's been touted by some representatives at the New York State level. There's plenty of money, there's not, but we'll look elsewhere to find other sources if we need to go down this route in the future.
Okay, so the next one is an accounting shift. I want to make sure I'm very clear here, this is not a reduction in personnel. This is purely an accounting change. So our school lunch monitors are currently budgeted in the general fund. We are paying them right now out of the school lunch fund to alleviate some of the pressure the general fund is feeling this year. The school lunch fund is very healthy. It's continuing to be healthy. It's expected to continue to be healthy, especially in light of the free meals program this year, and that's continuing next year. So we are going to be removing the lunch monitors budgeted in the general fund and shifting them over to the school lunch fund. So just an accounting change, no impact to staff. We're just going to pay them out of a different fund. Salary adjustments, $50,000. Again, I want to reiterate, this is not an impact to staff at all. This particular adjustment is regarding our cleaners salary line. I think we've all heard Mike talk about, we're trying to get our full staff, we just haven't been able to get there. It's been a very challenging prospect to fully load our staff. So Mike and his team are, they have their systems in place and it's making it work. So we're not reducing positions, again, not reducing positions. This is just a decrease in the budgeted line based on the historical trends that have been being paid out of that line. I've assured Mike that this does not hinder your hiring in any way, shape, or form. Continue to do what you need to do. Just historically, this amount is a comfortable adjustment we can make to this line and reallocate that money somewhere else that we know it will be spent. We did calculate our health insurance contributions increase. We have our rates from our healthcare consultants. We took those rates and applied everyone's contractual contribution rate. And this is the increase that we were able to build into our general fund budget that assists in offsetting our health claims. So all told, we've adjusted just shy of $1.4 million for those items we just talked about. Any questions on any of those before we?
One of the things I want the board to know is you're thinking of your questions. These are things that administratively we are going to have to do. However, just because we do them, like Katie had mentioned about the salary adjustment, we're going to have to do them for a time being, and then just like after 2012, 2013, we're going to have to go through a period of rebuilding too. So no matter what, we're on the down cycle right now. So but just because we have to go through this process doesn't mean that it's permanent. It's relationship to this year, this funding, this inflation. Katrina.
So is this reducing that 15 million that we saw on the slide previous? So you're saying that you're able to bring that 15 million down to like 14 million by making these cuts?
You'll see the next slide.
Okay.
Yeah, so we've got the 13.9.
Okay, with these preliminary cuts. My other question was, I guess maybe I didn't realize. So Rich did say that he had put the 45,000 in his budget at the last one for the electronic buses.
Yes.
Now we're moving.
We're taking it back.
Okay.
It's something we identified as something that, one, we don't need to do at this point in time, and two, we can explore grant.
So does that increase what he showed us at the last meeting?
It would decrease
It
it.
decreases.
$45,000.
It would decrease his side of the budget by the 45 million.
Right.
His particular portion of the budget.
Okay, yes. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, in addition, many of those these items haven't even been presented because they usually come up in my budget presentation. So by the time we get there, you'll see those reductions within that because they're instructional. So I think another thing I want to point out is, we've all talked about this administratively, is these are the beginnings of some tough conversations, and as we call them, which ones have the fewest yeah buts, right? Because you get it, what about this, what about this? And we're trying to maintain staff strong, as Tom has said, but we know that the gap is the gap, and we have to make some tough choices, and as he just reiterated, we have to move forward with some things just to try to show you movement, which is different than we've done in previous years. Usually we're adding, right? We're saying we're robust, and here's our recommendation of adds, then we get to the end and asking you, what do you think, and here's what we think, and it's kind of the antithesis of that as we work through this process and try to come prepared to show you what we think is the best process moving forward. Not easy choices.
So when we, the 13.9 million, that is that's what we have to find reductions for, it still with increasing it by the 2%, is that correct?
So
That's
this-
part of it.
This number right now is exclusive of the increase in the tax levy. It does not include any use of reserve or fund balance yet. We're still holding on to that additional Holco state aid. That number's not in here yet. And then any other budget reductions that we're going to be talking about between now and the middle of April will get incorporated into this as well. So this is the snapshot today without the levy increase, without reserves, without fund balance.
Okay.
So the next slide, we don't typically talk about at this point in time, but here's what it would look like if we went out with the calculation as it stands today. That $6.6 million increase in the tax levy brings us down to 7.3. Again, we're not using any of the other tools, but just wanted to get that on your radar and thinking about that if we went out of that maximum allowable levy limit, with that 6.6, that's what our gap looks like. Now, there's still discussions to be had on whether or not we want to use the debt service reserve to bring that down, and how much are we comfortable with, and what does that look like? That'll bring the levy down, and we'll have the offset revenue of appropriating that reserve. So there's decisions to be made, but this is what it would look like today if we use that full levy amount.
So, as we go through the budget process, and as all of our past boards know, as we've gone through this, the board ends up setting the budget. You tell us the what. Tonight is the initial discussion that normally we'd have towards the end. But that final potential 2% tax levy decision, we're going to need to know a lot earlier than we would. Officially tomorrow, we must post on the Office of the State Comptroller's website whether or not the district intends to challenge and go above. In other words, raise more money than the 2%. Officially, right now, we are putting in, we are not planning on challenging that. But that is a decision you are going to have to make. Now, you can make it all the way up until the end. The sooner we know, the better. I'm not advocating for that, but I think that's something you're going to end up pondering. Just like there's another decision. You could say there's no way in hell we're going out at 6.6 or 2%, we want less. That is the board's decision, and once you make that determination, and that's why we need to know, because if you go out less than 6.6 or the 2%, which the state says we should be always going out at, even when it doesn't keep up with inflation, we've got to cut even more because that gap will grow. So that's going to be really the decision of the board. I think Mr. Conklin put something out. That's what the board is really determining, giving us the parameters of finalizing this budget. We don't need that decision tonight. But I definitely need to know at March 14th whether we're going to be going out and even considering a challenge, whether we're going out at the 2%, which is what the state says, or whether you wish to go out lower than that. Because no matter what, we've got to set that number. So right now, we're setting it at 2% for the next meeting, and it says that over in the right-hand corner, we are setting, as of today, we are recommending $1.3 million in reductions. And that's our new gap as of tonight. We still have other tools. We still have more reductions. But that's what we're showing you, because you're going to, I know you need some time to think about that, but we really need to have that discussion at the next meeting. Does everybody understand or have questions about that? Yes?
Did you just say we have to have something voted on tonight because you have to have it posted for tomorrow?
No, that is our assumption at the Office of the State Controller. By March 1st, all districts must declare, at least initially, whether or not their district intends to challenge the tax cap. We can modify that anytime up until the end of our budget process. We are putting up that we do not intend at this point, because that's the truth, we don't intend to challenge it at this point, but we just have to meet the statutory deadline of March 1st. So I don't need a decision from you, we're just telling them we're not planning on doing it until we make our final decision on the budget.
Okay, and the board makes the final decision.
The board
on
makes
the
all
budget.
final decisions on the budget, it's all your bailiwick, so to speak, and I hate to say that, but it's truly, we only do the how on the budget, you have to tell us the what.
So is it the assumption that it's the board's decision that we're not gonna levy it, like the preliminary one that they're putting up for March 1st? Or is it the understanding of the comptroller's office that it's the district that's deciding that we're not gonna levy it?
Right now, it's the district's deciding, we are not planning on going above that 2%. The board maintains the final decision just because we have to put something out there. And we don't want to say to the community, we're challenging it because the board hasn't made that decision yet.
Okay, I just got confused because I thought you had said that the board had to make the decision tonight to let you know if we were challenging it or that it was our decision to do that, but that's not, I just maybe misheard you.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I'm asking the board to really think about it over the next couple of weeks. If you have questions, send them to me. But right now, we're assuming we're at the maximum allowable tax levy calculation that the state says we should go out with. That's why 6.6 is now up there and the gap is 7.3. If the board at the next meeting says we agree, that gets locked in and we'll turn it black. If the board says no, we want to wait, we want to consider a challenge, right? We'll keep it up there and keep that gap, but we'll keep going. If the board says no, we definitely want to go under that, we're going to need to ask you, how much do you want to go under? Because we have to know that number for the last presentation because we have to start finalizing the budget. So really the next 2 weeks are that point. Next decision point is next week on that number.
And is this presentation available to see on the website?
It's all of our presentations are available on the website.
I'll get it all on there because I was trying, I'm on my phone tonight because of that.
It will be posted once we get the ability to do it. We don't post it beforehand.
Okay, because I was trying to figure that out. So I will be able to review this information if I needed to.
You're always able to, yes.
Thanks. Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Johnson?
I think your assumption on our intention of challenging the tax levy limit is sound, and I think we could probably make that decision by the majority of the board tonight, because the percentage is so high, the number is so high, I can't imagine us trying to sell a percentage even at the levy limit. It strains, I think, what we can ask this community for.
My caution right now, and I pretty much probably concur with you, but my caution is once you see how to close 7.3 million, my experience in the past is sometimes people say we don't want to lose that. I just don't know what to advise you. That's why you can tell me one thing at the next meeting and then all of a sudden at the end change it. But we need to at least have some narrowing of the direction. Other questions? Mr. Christmas?
Well, one, I would just like to thank you for, again, another, the group, everyone that spoke, for a very well done budget presentation. It is positive to see that we're able to make the reductions that we have, so thank you for the thoughtful efforts put into that. Recognizing, as you said, that we'll continue this discussion into the next meeting, it just strikes me that I don't know how we, certainly from my perspective, because the maximum allowable levy only closes the gap to that point. I don't see it. I'm not advocating exceeding it, but I certainly think we would want to try to maximize what the state says we have the ability to maximize, recognizing that's an impact for the community, and we always try to make that impact as minimal as possible, but, we as a district have had the same inflationary pressures and have to, I certainly hope, can continue to maintain the programs and services that we offer for our students. So it seems to me like it will be hard to not go out at the maximum allowable levy, but of course we'll talk about that more.
Yeah, and if you remember earlier I talked about the gap elimination, the inflation differences of what local we should have kept up with in the state. Remember that was $11.3 million? Look at what the gap is right now. We'd have another $4 million if we could lower that tax levy. But we've never kept up with the requirements. So we're not totally done tonight. We have one more thing that might help us in the long run, and I think, is it Tony or do you have anything? Okay, so turn it back over.
So if we look at some of these remaining tools, balancing out the 24-25 fiscal year, one thing we have to do is also analyze how the current year is going to end. Current year is also fiscally tight. This current year is feeling the strain of everything that Dr. Douglas has talked about. So some of these additional tools, as far as fund balance and reserves that we see here, we may have to talk about utilizing a different level of those to support this year. So understanding how this year is going to look will inform how we can use these tools for 24-25. So we're exploring all options as we are for 24-25. We're exploring all options for the current year as well. So one of the things that we are looking at, Tom will get into more detail, is how we can leverage our federal funds differently. We talked about this last time as far as our common ones, our title monies and our special ed monies, reimagining and repurposing how we use those. But we also are coming up on the end of our ARP funds. Those have to be expended by September of this year. We don't want to lose any of that money. We have about $390,000 left to spend. So Tony's going to walk through our proposed spending plan for that. Why we're going to be proposing the changes that we're making both for this year and next year.
Some of you might have recalled in the State Awake the presentation on grants, to which I referred to all the different pots of money that we are currently going through as a team to try to address and look at reductions or shifting of money there. So that is in the works, as Katie said. This one is going to specifically refer to these two funds and pots of money. The one on the left, the American Rescue Plan, we have unspent money. I want to be clear on why there's money sitting there. It's not because we didn't allocate it towards the technology and the social emotional well-being as we saw from the public. It's because the timing of the grant cycle. All right, at the time that the grant was given, the money was given, the timeline to which we had to develop a plan with all the bells and whistles and jumping through the hoops and finally getting a plan in place. It had already been several months into the allocation, so when we said we were going to add a counselor at the intermediate school, 5 months of that FTE salary sat there unspent. All right, so other times, our social worker at the high school, we put that out for hire, but the current market wasn't there. It went unfilled, on and off, over the course of several months, so that FTE allotment kind of sat there, unspent. So that's what happened. That's why primarily a good portion of that money comes from that delay in time, or just the way that the hiring processes have gone. The other piece is the change needs, and that's in specific reference to some reallocations we're going to suggest I want to make with our technology. You heard me earlier say we have a certain amount of money in our ARP money in technology expenditures, in the laptop and the one-to-one. We're feeling confident on our cycle and where it is that we can change some of the technology money to offset in other places. So I'm going to go through just a very 30,000-foot view of what the plan is. The amendment itself will be posted on the website for people to review and add comments as required. So this is an intent to give the overall view without getting into the weeds, allow people and everybody to look at it, see what exactly is happening, what's being reduced, what's being added of that pot of money, and to reach out to the district, and then finally at the next board meeting to move forward, hopefully, to alter that previous slide to say, okay, we can make some other reductions and changes based on the ARP money. So one thing that's we've held tight is the continuation of our Summer Learning Academy. We don't have enough funds in that particular ARP line currently to fund it that we had in years past. It's our recommendation that we move money from those, the unspent, and reallocate it, and add more to that line so we can continue a robust program for those struggling learners that don't meet the expectations of our ESY program. There are, just those struggling learners K through 6, and house them again for a program during the summer to curb learning loss. So it's been a great program for the last 2 years. We'd like to continue it a third year out of grant funding, but we do have to have a consideration in the next year on operational budget. Right, sooner or later, not currently, let me be very clear, it's after July 1. So it's not for next year's operational budget. We'll cover it through the ARP as we have in the past by adding more money to it from other funds in the ARP. And then next year, this time, we'll have to talk about the value of it and how we want to fund it, if at all, for that next summer, because it'll be no longer within the grant. Our current positions, we didn't cover full costs. So we had several grant-funded positions that came through this line for current year that we might not have taken all the FTE. We might only say, okay, out of grant, we're going to pay 0.5, 0.76, some odd number. What we're suggesting is taking that unspent money and just add to that same line to pay for that thing in full, whether it be salary benefits in total. So those positions I mentioned earlier might not have been fully allocated out of this grant. The suggestion is we'll just increase the amount from the unspent money and now fully allocate out of that grant. The after-school piece of that, in the past we've just paid the tutoring center cost. Again, this is just a recommendation to continue and add money to continue paying the tuition center, tutoring center costs. Again, it already exists in the line. We're just increasing it to maintain it for the particular school year and to move forward with paying for that service. Again, we're running short on that money. The money is coming out of operational budget. Here's an opportunity to offset it with grant funds as it already had been intended. And lastly, we have an opportunity to offset summer curriculum work for 24 by using this. We already have money allocated for this. This is nothing new in the grant. I think that's the most important thing to mention. All these allocations, this amendment is just moving money to already existing programs within the approved grants that we started with. We're not creating anything new. We're kind of just moving it to pre-existing lines to cover things that we've already been doing for the most part, actually in totality, including summer curriculum. The benefit of that one, it will offset our general fund budget of curriculum for 1 year anyways. We can see a reduction in our general fund for curriculum work, and therefore we can show you another savings in a tool for savings for next fiscal year. Katie and I have had numerous conversations about being very aware and keeping tight track with our technology and particular items like this to say, okay, in year 25, 26, however, we have to make a plan to put it back into place, right? We can't just offset it with a one-time grant and say, next year we're left, okay, now we have to make sure that we continue it on in our general, bring it back into our general budget. That goes for the Summer Learning Academy as well. We'll have to, what's the value added and determine what that might be. But for now, we have this pot of money just shy of $400,000 sitting there. Let's not lose it. We only have till September to spend it. Let's put an amendment in place, as most districts are doing, to reallocate to particular lines to move forward. Again, this will be the actual drafted document, the FS10. Will be posted to the website, open for the C District website for details, allowing what's required of the feedback loop, the open comment, and if we get anything, we'll consider it. But otherwise, this is our recommendation to move forward administratively. Questions on that ARP money?
I have some questions. So this was the presentation that you gave us back in September, the ARP money?
Yeah.
Okay, and so at the end of that presentation, you had talked about how it was pretty much already spent down to about 23,000 or something like that. It seemed like it was a much smaller number. No?
No.
It wasn't? Okay.
At that time, there was about $1.2 million left, but because we didn't allocate out the full year salary costs of some positions, we've now since done that. So at that point in time, there's $1.2 million, I believe, was left in that fund. But then now all the FT and all other things in that were carried out until June 30th. that it exits out. So our number is about $392,000 left over.
392,000 left over,
So
something like that?
just shy of 400,000.
Okay, so this was the money that was left over in the computer fund. I think that was like $1 million, the one-to-one that we looked for technology. Is that the fund that you're talking about that you didn't take the money from? I'm just doing this off the top of my head because I don't have my laptop in front of me, but I've read through this a lot of different times.
Sure, and what's very difficult about the ARP money is we often offset the final year of ARP with the CIRSA money. And they overlap. So there's some things that we picked up, because CIRSA ended in September of '23, we picked it up in ARP for the final year, so till September of '24. Technology is an example of that. We had 3 years of spending in CIRSA, and then we also picked up some years and then an increase on the 4th year in ARP. So remember, and within ARP, there's like 6 different grants. I don't want to confuse the matter, and you don't want another 45 minutes diatribe on that.
Nope.
But the idea is there are a variety of unspent money. Technology, there's some money sitting there right now that Bill has started to use, and to help offset our operational budget to show reductions there. $210,000 you saw earlier. So we're trying to leverage this money in the same categories as the public told us, and just reallocate to those same lines and increase them to cover costs of the final year and into the summer to offset next year's school budget.
Yeah, and I think that kind of goes back to my initial questions at that September meeting, when I was looking at what the percentages had said for what people were looking for the money to be spent on. And we spent the $1.4 million on the Center Street HVAC system, and then $780,000 on the Big Flats HVAC system. I know for sure, and the other thing that looked like both of those were parts of approved budget proposals, so I would have assumed that the budget was increased that much and that money should have gone into capital project funds. But my worry now is that if we're cutting out more, an additional $300,000, that's well over half of the money that was supposed to go to help children with their learning loss, and now we're taking more, even though it's shifting it from one place to another.
It's still going towards its intended use.
Well, you were saying that the Summer Learning Academy, we're going to cut out for this year.
No, I did not.
Oh, that's still going to be there.
We need to add money to it so we don't cut it. It currently does not have enough funds. It was grant funded through our summer percentage of ARP. There's a 1% set aside that was only allocated about $101,000. And at that time, that ran for 2 years. We're in year 3. We need to take other ARP out of our 20% state reserve and shift it over so we can run that program in full for 1 more year.
And what's important to note is whatever we have left, at this point, everything before that you mentioned was approved by the board, so that's a done issue. What happens is what we have left, either we address it or we will lose the money come September, period. That's the problem out there, the way they set this up. There are districts that are going to lose millions of dollars because they never absolutely, totally expended it. I believe, Tony, after you give this presentation, we believe we will be fully expended after the implementation of this amendment.
Oh yeah, we're not leaving it down on the table. We're going to spend all of this as appropriately, like I said before. It's all going to the categories that are appropriate and actually part of that graph and the feedback, whether it be technology or to fully fund the social emotional FTE that we added to the budget to add more of their salary and benefits on those lines that we didn't originally budget for.
So officially, we're bringing this plan to the board tonight for a 30-day notice. If the board
30 days
approves
not
it,
required.
okay.
It's just required that we bring it to the public comment. If I remember right, Stacy doesn't even require board action, but we've always brought it for a thumbs up, kind of are we on the right track to move forward in this action. But it is money on the table that we should allocate appropriately. And I would hope that whether it be at the next meeting or the meeting after that, that we get a thumbs up so we can start working in that to our deficit for this year. It will affect this year as well as next year.
Which will roll over into next year.
So the public is supposed to be able to make a comment on this?
They can send their comments in. Yep.
Okay, and was this on the were these slides posted to the agenda tonight for people to be able to see?
Again, this goes up tomorrow, and then the FS10 draft will go up early next week. Stacy and I worked on it, we reviewed it one last time for public comment. And it's right on the ARP page, right-hand side. It already says the previous amendment, and it'll say draft amendment with the date.
Plus, anyone in the district that received my communication yesterday about the solar eclipse, it was already in there, so parents have already been informed.
Oh, sorry, I missed that. Okay, so it will have the line item, the amounts for each of those bullets will be
Absolutely,
there.
as required by law.
So this will be for the ARP and the ARP state reserve grants?
Yeah, it'll detail out as the budget process required for state submittal and show the reductions and the deduct line and the addition line to offset costs and remove the broken lines. No new lines being created, it's all within the structure.
Okay, and then the public can just email in their comments.
They can just comment, we take feedback, and if there's anything worth noting that's going to change the mind, or if it's not like someone comment, we want to make like a shift or whatever someone tells us to do, it's thank you for your comment, we'll consider that, and if there's something that says, okay, wait, hold on, that's important, we missed that, then we definitely take that into consideration.
And they must include their name, address, and information, contact information.
We can
in
take
case
it
we
on
have
this one
questions.
so that.
They can't just do
Yeah,
it.
the district residents.
Okay, thank you.
So this will help this particular school year, as Katie said, and the tightness that we've seen here, as well as next year and offset some costs that we hopefully show some minor. Again, it's $400,000, but as you saw from the BOCES, we're looking at $6,000 lines. We're looking at everything possible to bring that budget in because we realize that's FTE that we can save in the future. That's what we look at. The Smart School Bond Act, this goes back, this is pre-anybody in, well, maybe a couple of people in this room were around for that one. It goes back some time ago, maybe some of you remember that.
2012.
2012, I think it was. This is just a remaining balance that's been hanging out there. We bought a variety of things over the years. I don't know all the details. All I know is we got $241,214 sitting on the table. We've been looking to use this. This one comes with a lot more regulatory requirements, including a 14-day posting to the newspaper, which sounds ridiculous to say out loud, but that's 2012 legislation. And other things, I put it out now also for public comment, and it becomes more official as we get to you will have to see a board presentation and several slides on this on the 14th, so that we can officially spend that money. It is a requirement, so there'll be a half dozen or a dozen slides that we'll go through real quick so everybody understands, and then there is a timeline for the public to provide feedback.
Katie's going to present those slides.
What's that? So quick. The planned spending, we'd like to, we've worked on a long time, a lot of different situations on this one, and we landed here with 171 laptops and 28 interactive boards. Replacement cycles. Again, will definitely benefit and offset operational budgets. And these put us in a good positions. Often those interactive whiteboards are knock on something, 8 to 12-year cycle, some are 10, if we're lucky, right though. And then those laptops go to a 5-6-year cycle, depending upon what grade levels we put them at. So not something we're going to see impacted in the following year, but definitely an offset to operational costs we should consider in the use of that money.
So this is considered a federal grant that sits in our federal account?
No, state.
State account, okay, so but if we don't use this money, it can sit there for how long?
I don't know if there's
There's no deadline, actually. There's no
deadline on money.
We've used pieces of it over the years.
However, the state can implement law and regulation to end the $4 billion bond that they got community approval after so many years. I do not believe they will do that. We will be one of the first we were one of the first 3 school districts in the state even to get a project done under this in 2015. This is just what's been remaining and lagging because it takes so long to get the plan and process together. We're trying to get it so that we're totally off the books. Katie?
Yeah, so just for context, the initial allocation to the district was $2.9 million. We used that money
before I got here for a capital
We
project.
did it for a capital project here at the high school to update the technology infrastructure. We did that in tandem with the same project at the middle school, updated their infrastructure and built a softball field. So the bulk of that money went to its intended purpose, updated the infrastructure here at the high school. We spent everything except this $241,000. It's a reimbursement process, so we spend the money up front, and then there's a reimbursement request process with the state that we get the money back. So that's all done and closed for that initial project. We have $241,000 that we can spend and get the money from the state. It's not sitting anywhere with us, but it is earmarked at the state for us.
The longer they keep it, the more interest they make.
And so what, I guess I'm wondering what it could all be used for if we still wanted to use it for the original intended purposes of the.
This is smart schools, it related to technology. Primary purpose is technology, and so this is our needs in technology right now.
So, Katie, at the last meeting, were you talking about looking to find more grants for some of the computers or things like that? Would this be money that we could be utilizing for that?
We are buying 171 laptops with this.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
And 28 interactive boards.
Okay, so this is what your proposal is, like when you were saying you were
Yeah.
looking towards grants to try to find the money, you're saying this is the money that you have found to be able to help pay
This
for
has
that?
been in the works for a while. It's an extensive process to build the application and the investment plan, and things of that nature.
It's been over a
Mike
year
and
already.
Bill have spent a lot of time identifying what boards to replace. So this has been in the works for a while, and the timing is fortunate that we can buy these laptops now and take some of the pressure off our budget.
So this is the grant you were referring to at the last, that
One of them.
Yeah, okay, all right. Thank you for that clarification.
So as I said, this information will be posted to the website, opens any kind of public comment, and the 14th will have a formal process for the SSBA, and we hope to move forward with the amendment to the American Rescue Plan to offset some operational costs.
Well, ladies and gentlemen of the board,
Katie, thank you as always.
like I said, I can't ask for a better financial and business department, my executive team. This is just in 2 weeks worth of work. Okay, the harder part is still yet to come, decisions to be made, and I appreciate that you are looking at telling us the what, not the how, not the specifics, but giving us the general dynamics, and we will create that budget for you. I have, my entire administrative team will be here throughout, and we struggle with it, but we want you to know we're trying to do our best we can on behalf of not only you, but on behalf of our entire workforce, our community, our kids, and our program. But it's not going to be easy. So here at the future budget meeting, March 14th, there'll be technology at facilities. Be prepared. Mike Cochran's coming for facilities. So we'll try to have Katie do his, but who knows? Wednesday, March 20th, right, Dan? You saw that, right?
Yeah.
March 27th is Board of Education regular meeting, 6 p.m. This will be a long evening, because I imagine you will have questions. That's our instructional and district administration budget, and that goes over benefits, everything. It's almost the wrap-up of our general rollout budget. We may meet Thursday, April 11th, so put that on your calendars. We may meet Wednesday, April 17th, only to approve the BOCES administrative budget, because they require it to be done on the 18th. We have it already scheduled at 7:30 a.m. If there's an objection, it'll be at 6 o'clock at night. But this is a quick, really 5-minute board meeting, well advanced. And then Wednesday, April 18th, Board of Education meeting. This is the night of our budget adoption. On the 19th, we file our school report card, and on the 19th, we go into spring recess. So it's not a bad time, but this is the time where Sue all knows that she won't have to worry about it, but Sam will. We have to start developing our communication out. So that's our budget calendar. That's where we're at. Questions?
Should be Thursday, April 18th.
Oh, sorry, yes. Thank you.
Sorry.
No problem. A lot of Wednesdays up there. Other questions?
Again, thank you very much. Think about it. If you need something, give me a call. I'd be happy to discuss. Thank you, guys.
I'm sorry, was the 18th a for sure or a maybe?
No, the 18th
Is
is
it
for
for
sure.
sure
We
by
have to
meeting
adopt
of
it
the
that night.
18th? Okay, I'm just writing it in my planner, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, thank you to everybody on the administrative team that put together tonight's presentation. I'm sure you spent a lot of hours and hard discussions, and I thank you, and I'm sure the children of our community thank you also, even though they probably don't even know what you're discussing. But nonetheless, you do a great job, so thank you. All right, so next we move to section 3, and I'll take the action vote on 3.02, which is the proposed school calendar, and then I'm going to add a possible creation of an ad hoc committee, and I'll read a resolution, and then the board can discuss and vote whether it's the procedure they want to take. So first of all, we'll need a motion on 3.02, which is the proposed school calendar for the years 2024-2025.
Second.
Curiosities, discussion, comments?
I just had a comment. I was noticing that the half days in June, they were all taken away and they were moved to more of November. Well, there's a couple, but in years previous, we would have like 4 days in a row of the half days.
That is all contractually driven.
Okay,
I have to have a agreement with the HTA to do that because that would save days. They have opted this year to go by the contract. So
okay,
this
just
is
do
a
two.
contractual calendar.
Okay,
Yep.
okay, thank you. I was
Yeah.
just wondering about the change. I like it. I think it's a little easier than having so many close together.
All right, sorry.
No problem. So this calendar has a full day of school on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving?
Yes,
Okay.
Half, it says half.
it's a half day. So we will be closing school as soon as the half day's over and getting people out of here, kids and staff. But unfortunately, that's the only way I could get the 180 something days that I need for students without going into February break for one day, which I'm not going through that hell. I'm sorry.
And then June 25th, 26th are Regents exams and half days
For pre-K through 8th only.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
Yep.
So with those days in June, so does that mean graduation will still be in the middle of the semester graduation?
Correct. It still would start with our Wednesday, the 25th, to the 26th, to the 27th, to the 28th. Which does pose a problem this year, I found out, because a parent that has children graduating from Corning Painted Post and us wants us to move ours so that she can attend Corning Painted Post, that moved theirs to Wednesday night, and I said, we were here first, I'm sorry, you have to talk to Michelle. And Michelle was like, sorry, Tom, we had to move it up because we're letting everybody go on Wednesday where we go till Friday, but our weather procedure has been pretty well known by our community, so I can't really adjust it on them because they plan around it.
How many days are built in for snow days?
This one, I believe, has roughly 4 days. in it.
Okay, and then once you go by the 4, you start to eat.
Then I have
First
some
day.
tools that might be able to help. Depends, look at, if all the days come in November, I have February break.
Yeah.
Or I have Christmas break even. So I have a lot of tools in here. Hopefully it's like this year, nothing comes. Who knows? I doubt it.
Other queries? All right, call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, so now I have a motion, and this is probably the worst demonstration of teaching where you're going to read this instead of having a handout for you to read, but we prepared this at the last moment. So, whereas the Horsehead Central School District Board of Education desires to create a Board of Education Operations Procedure document for board members, whereas an ad hoc committee of the board will utilize the draft Horsehead Central School District Board of Education operating procedures to establish the key policy, procedures, and norms for the Horsehead Central School District Board of Education members to follow. Whereas the final draft of the Horsehead Central School District Board of Education operating procedures, upon its completion, will be submitted for the full Board of Education's review by May 1st, 2024, and any action thereafter. Whereas the membership of this Board of Education ad hoc committee is Daniel Christmas, Marianne Corbett, Christine Dale, and Elizabeth Odell Welling, as well as the ad hoc committee shall include the following district administrators: Dr. Thomas Douglas, Anthony Gill, Katie Bizzetti, Caitlin DiFilippo, and Kelly Squires. Whereas the committee will determine the meeting schedule and frequency needed to meet the expected delivery date of the final draft to the board, and this ad hoc committee will be chaired by Elizabeth Odell Whaling, Board Vice President, and supported by the district administration. Whereas the board ad hoc committee will be dissolved in May 2024 or earlier upon the submittal of the final draft of the Horsehead Central School District Board of Education operating procedures to the board president. Therefore, be it resolved, the Horsehead Central School District Board of Education President Warren Conklin motions to hereby establish an ad hoc committee of the board for this purpose and timeline. So, I made the motion by this declaration, so I need a second.
Second.
All right, so now we have curiosities, discussion, comments.
Go ahead, Doug.
So I've expressed in another forum that we have a whole section of our policy manual devoted essentially to board operations. And so, and the ad hoc committee, I guess, will, assuming this passes, will look at our current policies and maybe suggest some changes. I'm just concerned that this seems like it's either a big add-on potentially to 2000s policies, or I'm not sure if the intent is to solely work within the policies or to develop some other documents, and if these other documents are intended to be binding on the board, are these annual resolutions of this document, or is this something we're just going to vote on at the end of the process and it'd be binding upon all of us? I don't know if the ad hoc committee, if it's operational, is going to determine all of this. I'm just a little concerned that we have board policies in this area. believe at least in part of this area you're talking about, and what the ad hoc committee is going to do with them, and how that's going to relate to the work of the policy committee.
So, we embarked on this after our board retreat in January with the hopes of creating some norms as to how we operate. And I didn't bring the booklet with me, but our moderator gave me a booklet of recommendations from NISBA. You're right, some of the things that were included in that booklet are part of our policy. So what Liz and Dr. Douglas and myself have done is we sat down and took the NISBA book and cross-referenced it with some of our policies. And then the document this ad hoc committee will see has let's say NISBA had recommended policy one in their booklet. I'll just play a little loose with the language, right? So it's not exactly perfect. So we looked at what that was in the NISBA booklet, and then we looked, do we have a policy that corresponds with it? We took the policy that corresponded with it, we outlined that in green in our document, and then we looked at NISBA's recommendation and said, all right, they have 9 statements, let's say. We think 4 of those are good statements. Let's add it to the policy. And we just created, here's a document now that the ad hoc committee can work on. They can say, we don't like the suggestions you've added to the policy. We want to add more, maybe. I think there were some good suggestions from NISBA in there on things we didn't have policies on. For example, we've been receiving a lot of requests for non-agenda items, and we have no policies on how to request non-agenda items and what procedures should be followed. So that is part of the document. So I guess to recap, we took NISBA's book, cross-referenced it with our policies, and then created a document for the ad hoc committee to work on. And then it's up to them to determine where they want to go from there. So our policies are not being excluded, they're being incorporated and included with potentially some additions to what we currently have.
Follow-up question. So if the ad hoc committee recommends a change to one of our policies, will then that go to the policy committee for review?
I think we were thinking it's going to come to the full board, but maybe that's still
It
open.
can actually go to both. I mean, officially, policy is only set by the full board. But there could be, depending on how the committee sets up its time frame, there could be time to be able to say, hey, we got through these 4, hey, look at this at your next meeting. And see it, because you're going to see it one way or another as this. There, as you saw, Warren put Deanne and Mary Ann on, so there are at least 2 members of the policy committee already on that as well. So as they report out, you'll see what they're doing.
Other queries? Katrina, how are you?
I'm doing okay. So I have a few comments, I guess. So you were just referencing that we had been getting inquiries for agenda items to be placed onto the agenda that shouldn't have been placed onto the agenda.
I didn't use the word shouldn't have. I said we didn't have a formal procedure to deal with it, and NISBA's booklet gave recommendations on a formal procedure.
But we do have a policy on how items can be placed on the agenda. And it does talk about it. It says the board shall follow the order of business set up by the agenda unless the order is altered at the beginning of the meeting. Items of business not on the agenda may be discussed and acted upon if the majority of the members are present to agree on them. The agenda together with supporting materials shall be made available to board members and central staff of the board meeting to the extent possible to permit for time and consideration of the agenda for the staff. It says the superintendent of schools shall prepare all agendas for the meetings of the board. In doing so, the superintendent shall consult the board president, other members of the board as desired, and appropriate members of central staff. So it does talk about agenda preparation, and that is something that I used whenever I would email over items that I would like to have been discussed on it. Perhaps how to add something to an agenda would be something that we would go over in our board orientation, which is also a policy that we already have. Since the beginning of my time on this board, I went through my orientation, I have asked questions, I have made comments that we do not follow our current policies. And because I ask questions that people don't like, or because I take too long in public comment, we are now forming a committee to try to deal with the inconsistencies rather than just look at our current policies to note that we haven't been using them. Another thing that's important
Can I just, if you're saying we have been inconsistent, I don't always agree with you, but wouldn't this benefit then? Wouldn't this be something that you should favor? Because now, once this document is created, you would be able to say, when the document's brought to you, it has addressed your concerns about inconsistencies.
I would like to believe that I would feel that way, except for experience has, my experience with how I have been treated, you know, it's been a little bit of a double standard. So I'm not trying to go into that right now. The other problem that we have is that when you just talked about the 4 people on the committee, 4 people would be a quorum, so therefore that
No, it
would...
would not.
Well, we don't have
It
the...
does not matter. The quorum of the Board of Education is 5 members. That was what I need to pass anything, and the quorum maintained. So please do not state it's a quorum.
I would think under open meeting law, because our board is right now down to 8 members, that would be the case. The other thing...
If I can correct you, and I'm sorry I have to butt in, the law is very clear. The quorum of this board, a 9-member seated board, even though there's one that is vacated, is still 5, not 4.
Okay, I'm going to try to take that tone a little
No,
bit gentler.
I'm not feeling well, so my voice is
Yeah,
very
okay,
now.
okay. So I had looked up one of our other policies that we had, because I was starting to go back through after we had talked about the norms committee, to look at the operations and the things that we have and the things that are in place and the things that we don't follow. And one of those was policy 2150, and it talked about fulfilling an unexpired term on the board. And so I went to that and I read it, and then I emailed NISBA for clarification on that. And they said that Central School District is actually supposed to fill a vacant seat and call a special meeting immediately upon the resignation of the 9th person. So that would have been having to happen after Kevin Adams had taken place. Now that was something that I did suggest and ask to have on the agenda prior to the Amy Sidlansky meeting, and I did say that. That was something that I feel like I followed the policy. I brought it to the attention. It was 6 days before, but it was said that we can't put that on the agenda because the agenda has already been finalized. But I wanted to put it on there, and so NISBA, I have an email from her. I got it this afternoon, and then I have been running from massage to curriculum to here. And I have a voicemail from her too outlining it, and it does say that we are supposed to call a special meeting immediately and fill the night.
Point of order. order, point of order. I'm confused. Just hold on one second, because I want to make sure that we're giving you the proper time for this. Is this covering this discussion of forming this committee, or is this a completely different topic?
I think it's off topic, but we have board member comments at the end, but I guess it's sort of part of it. I guess you're speaking against formation of the committee, is that what your purpose is right now?
Yes, I am, because every time I email, there has been many times that I have been told that we're not in violation of something, and then I get an email and I try to show the board from whether it's open meeting law or somewhere else where it says that we were in fact in violation, and you are telling me that we are not a quorum, but there have been several instances where you have told me things, and then when I email somebody back, they tell me the opposite. And so I do not believe when you say that 4 people does not constitute a quorum. I'm saying that if we're forming a committee with half of the board, then in fact, since we don't have a 9th member, which we should be calling a special meeting tonight to follow the law, we're having a quorum, which means that even now, our audit committee and our policy committee, if everybody was there, would be subject to open meeting law, which we would have to follow, which would make them all open because we're only down to 4 people. Now, I don't know, I could send an email out for clarification, but what I do is I always email for clarification to find out for sure what's true and what's not, so I have a really good understanding of it. So I am not trying to have an argument about this, but I don't believe that we could have 4 members on a committee at this time, because I am unsure 100% if it would be in violation of open meeting law.
All I can say, Katrina, is any questions you've sent, I've answered this and asked and answered several times. Just because you call NISBA, which I was going to ask later, NISBA called us asking for a board member's phone number and we don't give it out. So I would request, I need to know the name of that person at NISBA that you are talking to. The reason being is NISBA does not control or give direction to boards of education. Our attorney does. NISBA has nothing to do with us except they represent our organization as a lobbying agency. Now, our board policy on unexpected expired terms for fulfillment was read. It was brought up at the next regularly scheduled Board of Education meeting after the resignation, and the board had its discussion and followed its policy. Oh, yes, they did. The board voted on it. It's in every one of our minutes.
We voted not to close. Yes.
And that is an option for the board because of the cost and the fact that by the time the 90-day window came, anyone elected would be serving for 30 days.
I didn't think that that's how our policy read.
I'll read the policy.
I thought you said that you read the law to us that night.
No, I'll read the policy because that's what I read. The Board of Education shall consider all legal alternatives for filling a vacancy among its members. Official action or announcement will be made at the earliest regular meeting of the board that allows sufficient time to make a reasonable decision. If the board chooses to appoint an individual to the vacancy, the board may develop a list of criteria qualities most desirable to strengthen the board. Defining the screening procedure, create interview questions, establish an interview timeline, conduct interviews, and select a candidate to fill the vacancy by majority vote of the board, which at that time, no matter what, would still require 5 Board of Education members because that is our official quorum. If the vacancy is filled by appointment, the new board member serves until the next regular school district election. And the reason why it's always 5 is if we had 9 members and 1 is missing, I still have to have 5 members to pass any legislation. If we have 4 members, it does not pass. 4 members does not constitute a quorum, therefore our audit committee is not subject to open meetings law, or the policy committee, especially if the committee of a board is made up of individuals that are in more, I think it's more numbers than the members of the board on the seat. which in this case, there are 5 district administrators that will have to assist because we know how district operations are to help advise the board with its policy and considerations of how the district has worked and continues to work. What I would say is frustrating is, in a way, you're saying, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And I've been doing this for 15, 30 years. I advised with our legal counsel. Our legal counsel was at the retreat. Our legal counsel is who we talk to whenever we have these issues. And honestly, over the course of the year, I'm being told that I'm not answering questions, and yet I've asked, what questions have I not answered? I have yet to get a response. I have asked if we've violated open meetings law for you to send in all communications that you communicated to OML. You have failed to do so. In addition, when you do that, there's context to it. And if we're only hearing one side, like this person talked to you, that context is lost because you may be saying exactly what you're saying here, and that may be your perspective. But that doesn't mean that that's necessarily what's happening in the district, and advice might be given differently. That's why we rely on our legal advice of Ferrara and Forensic. NISBA never gives final. And honestly, I'm surprised NISBA is reaching out and imparting itself into the board dynamic without talking to the full board.
Okay, I'm not trying to have a back and forth, and that's just really a lot for me to handle as a board member. I'm just trying to present to the board that it does say, the law says that we are supposed to fill it. There's a reference to...
Can you read that law, please?
Do you want to? No.
I'd like to know, if you're going to read into the record that the law requires us to do this, I'd like you to read the law so we can be
It
clear.
says, school, what they sent me, our school district's obligated to...
Wait, who's they? Who's they and what law are they citing?
Can you cite it, please?
This was from NISBA, that she sent it over to me. And it says, the applicable laws impose upon union-free and central school districts the power and duty to fill vacancies. 1709, parentheses 17, comma, 1804, parentheses 1, the appeal of the BD of Education of Gilbertsville - Mount Uptown CSD 59 ED Department Rep decision number 17,836 in parentheses 2020 appeal of French, 32 ED Department Rep 100 in parentheses 1992 and require common districts to immediately call a special meeting to fill the vacancy when it occurs, parentheses 1607, parentheses 2, according to the Commissioner of Education, small city school boards, we're not small city school board because we're a central district, but this was an email that I had just received right before we had gotten it. So there's a lot of different things in it, but you know, I try to make sure that I'm going back through to look up to see that I'm following policies and state law and doing the best I can to help to inform and do the best that I can. So I am not in favor of forming this committee because I feel I've been felt since the beginning of this, where I was called into executive session for board dynamics, and that certainly was not what took place, and it's not a reason to go into executive session at all. And when I emailed to find out about it and not to talk about what happened in board dynamics, I just kind of don't have faith that what's going to happen with the committee is going to be something that's fair because of what took place in there and what I still am feeling like is taking place right now, when all I'm trying to do is share black and white information. That's it.
Mr. Christmas, Ms. Corbett, and then Mr. Johnson. Excuse my pointing.
So the reason I said that about the citation is because I take issue with the unsupported statements that we've repeatedly violated our policies of the law. And I think, frankly, what just happened is precisely the reason why we need board operation norms and procedures. To the extent that the school district Board of Education requires a legal opinion as to whether or not we're required to fill a seat, what a board member should do is ask the superintendent to receive a written opinion from the school district's legal counsel, which could then be shared with all members of the board. We should not have individual board members doing their own legal research and then stating as to what the law requires and whether the board has violated it or not, which is being broadcast to the community. And do you think that they're listening to anything other than the board's violated the law? And so I am in favor of this committee. Not because we're trying to silence anyone, but because we're trying to work as a cohesive unit. And exactly that is it. That's not Exhibit A for why we don't need some sort of standard procedures as to when we're going to get legal opinions for the board, then I don't know what is. Thank you.
Ms. Corbett?
I appreciate that.
Microphone.
Oh,
Sorry.
and with the mic. I so appreciate the fact that we have Mr. Christmas on this board, who is an attorney, and I also appreciate Mr. Johnson, who can explain things extremely well to all of us. And I sit here not being an attorney, but I have listened to Mr. Conklin's motion to establish this committee. And I think, Katrina, as each one of us sitting around this table, we each have our right to vote as we feel. And if you feel that this should not be, then all you have to do is say nay.
Johnson?
So I want to give a little context to our existing policy manual. I used to actually work for the New York State School Boards Association. I actually used to work for their policy division. And I knew the moment I saw our policy manual when I moved into the district, that was a product of the New York State School Boards Association Policy Service. So what you see by and large, especially in the 2000 section, are template policies from the New York State School Boards Association with some horseheads seasoning, if you will, of existing rules that we already had that were essentially spliced into the template. So what you start with this policy manual, especially in the 2000s, is what NISBA recommends in all these various areas, at least in 2001, when I believe if you look through the enactment dates, they're all basically July 2001, at least start date. To the particular question that was raised about quorum, we actually have a board policy of quorum. It says it shall be necessary that at least 5 members be present to hold a regular special meeting of the Board of Education. At least 5 votes in favor shall be required to carry the resolution. So it's just really essential that we all ask Dr. Douglas or Mr. Conklin. If we have questions, let's run it by them. Let's look at our board policy, see what it has to say, and the answers are generally going to be there. Thanks.
Ms. Dale?
So regarding the committee, I am in favor of the committee, and at our retreat, of which Ms. Humbarsky was not present, we spent 4 hours as a board talking about board operations, talking about open meeting law, and there was the recommendation coming out of that retreat that we all agreed to that we would continue the discussion, we would form this ad hoc committee, and we would put in place the appropriate procedures, and if we needed, update our policies. And so it is frustrating to me as well that we're debating this right now, because again, it is the direct outcome out of the retreat that we had specifically to address many of the concerns that Ms. Humbarsky has brought up in the past. So I am in favor of having that ad hoc.
Liz?
I context to the prep to kind of answer, to go back to your original question, Doug, and then give context to everyone what we were trying to do. So Tom has put hours and hours and hours into this document. Warren and I have looked at it as well. I desperately do not want to duplicate efforts. So if it's already in policy, we obviously don't need it in here. So I think the way that we have it structured right now will give us the opportunity to give it a fresh set of eyes, to then say to policy committee, hey, these are the things we thought of, yay, nay, vote on it as we go. But absolutely do not want to duplicate efforts, and I'm hoping there's a lot of reference policy X for more details so that this can be more of a guidebook, if you will, for board members. So that's the ultimate.
So just to make one thing off of that, as you said that Tom spent hours working on that, but if it's ultimately going to become the board policy, it seems like the board should be the people in charge of making sure that we are doing it in full. And then Dan, to go back to what you were saying, when you were saying that I'm saying that we're always in violation of policy, I did ask for the clarification on it. I go back and I ask, or I look it up. I'm not saying that we always are. I'm saying that there are inconsistencies, and I did make a suggestion for us to go back and start looking at board member orientation, because I believe that is where we could start with looking at how we're going to help educate new board members on ways they can have things added to an agenda without getting pushback, or ways that they can, you know, add to discussion. So I'm talking about, we already have policies. Yes, policies need to be changed. I believe that is the job of the policy committee that is already in place to do those things, not to create a new one. But then I think that we also should be looking into, even though our quorum says 5, since we do not have somebody here, if we need to look into open meeting law to state that if we are down a member, well, first, I think that we should be looking into for sure the law that was emailed over to me as reference when I asked the question. And I apologize that I wasn't able to send it over to the board sooner for you all to review. I can definitely email it over tonight after the meeting. But I do think that maybe we are supposed to be filling that vacant seat, and then we could have the committees. But if we aren't going to fill the vacant seat, I do think that we have to see if we are in violation to make sure that we are, you know, like if we're 4 and 4 and we're in violation of all, I think that we should have that clarification.
Ms. Corbett and then Ms. O'Donnell.
You know, I know I am the oldest member on this board. I am the oldest person in this room, and they accuse older people of being forgetful. I remember vividly the discussion we had about filling the empty spots, the time frame that it would take, the amount of money that it would cost the school district, and we took a vote, and we voted not to fill it until the upcoming election in May, right? So, I remember.
Couple points of clarity. When I said Tom spent hours on it, I myself spent 8 hours on this document. So believe me, when I say Warren and I really took to heart what was covered in the retreat, we looked at the policy, we really dug into this so that when the committee is together, we can hit the ground running.
If I can add,
Yes.
every word verbatim from the policies that was in the board operation procedure has been transferred over, so it's not NYSBA's board operation according to NYSBA, because they don't run boards. This is Horsehead's board policies with anything additional for consideration if you want to make a little more clarity to the policy. That is all that I did for the board so that you are ready to perform this at the request of the officers.
I call the question.
I just want to make one final comment. All right. I think it's disingenuous to say that the board is not going to have a say in this. All right? I think the work that was done in preparation to give it to the ad hoc committee may streamline what the ad hoc committee can do. But the ad hoc committee can do whatever they want. We just gave them a document to work from. So it's disingenuous to say that this is not being done by the board. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. There are no other items on the agenda, so I will take a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you all for coming out tonight. Travel safely to your residences and enjoy the last hours of this leap year.
This concludes the Board of Education budget meeting for February 29th. Thank you.